The night before my wedding should have been the last calm breath before a new life began. Instead, it became the moment everything I knew ripped open like a wound I couldn't close. At 3 a.m., I woke to fists pounding on my front door loud, frantic, the kind of knocking that makes your blood ice over. Before you're even fully awake, my heart was already racing before my feet hit the floor. When I opened the door, my fiancé's father stood there in the porch light, face pale, hair disheveled, wearing slippers and a jacket thrown on so fast he forgot to zip it. His hands trembled against the envelope. He was clutching an envelope with my name written in the familiar, looping handwriting I'd memorized from love notes, grocery lists, and the vows she had been writing only days before. Except tonight, her handwriting felt like a threat. He didn't speak for a moment, didn't breathe, didn't blink. He just held the envelope out to me like it weighed more than he could carry. "Ethan," he whispered, voice cracking. "She's gone." The words didn't make sense. They didn't belong to my life. They didn't fit the world I thought I was living in. My fingers fumbled as I tore the flap open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One sentence. Only one. "I can't marry a man who hides what you hide." I read it once, twice, 10 times. Each time my stomach folded in on itself, tighter and tighter, until it felt like something inside me was collapsing under its own weight. What was I hiding? What could I possibly have done? I wasn't hiding anything. But the letter didn't care about the truth. My throat burned. "Where is she?" I asked. But her father only shook his head, eyes glossy with panic. "She packed a bag and left while we were sleeping." She didn't say where. She didn't take her phone. She just left this for you. Left me her absence. Left me a question shaped like a knife. Left me the accusation of a sin I didn't commit. I read the sentence again, my pulse thundering. "I can't marry a man who hides what you hide." It felt like the words were judging me, condemning me, telling me that somewhere, somehow, something had been twisted into a truth she believed more than she believed in me. I wasn't hiding anything, but someone had convinced her that I was. Someone had planted a seed big enough to uproot our entire life on the eve of our wedding. Someone had turned the woman who knew me better than anyone into a stranger, running from a ghost version of me. As her father stood there trembling in my doorway, I felt the first crack in the reality I thought I knew. Because the note wasn't just a goodbye. It was a warning. And the most terrifying part wasn't that she left. It was that someone wanted her gone. My name is Noah Pierce, 32 years old, born without much, but raised to work with whatever I had. I'm an electrician's steady hands, quiet habits, predictable routines. I'm the kind of man who fixes things, wires, outlets, water heaters, people's bad days. I built my life on reliability because chaos was something I knew too well growing up. What I wanted most was simple: a home, a family, something steady I could hold on to without it slipping through my fingers. But the one thing I never learned how to fix was a lie I didn't see coming. For the first time in years, I thought I'd finally found my shot at happiness. Lila Hayes walked into my life like sunlight slipping into a room that had been dim for too long. She was warm, brilliant, laughing at things most people ignored. She could turn fixing a leaky pipe into flirting and paying bills into a date night with ice cream on the floor. She didn't just brighten my life, she rearranged it. In 2 years, she became the first person who didn't make me feel like I was patching up my existence. She made me feel like I was living. We planned the wedding ourselves, no planners, no drama, no overpriced nonsense. We spent nights at the kitchen table comparing fabric swatches, arguing over cake flavors, and pretending we weren't both terrified of messing it up. Every detail felt like building something real, something ours. We didn't just pick a venue. We picked a future. Last spring, we bought a little fixer-upper outside Austin, Texas. A creaky porch, stubborn windows, wiring that made me nervous, and I'm an electrician, but it was ours. We painted the bedroom together. She got paint in her hair. I pretended not to notice because it made her laugh. We argued about furniture. We compromised. We grew roots in that house, roots I thought would last decades. Roots I thought wouldn't be ripped up overnight. Then we rescued a dog, Cooper, a mutt with ears too big for his body, and a bark that didn't match his size. Lila adored him, called him our practice run for future kids. We joked about baby names while walking him at sunset. We argued about whose turn it was to clean up his messes. We built routines with him, routines that felt like a preview of married life. Now he waits at the door every night, tail wagging at sounds that aren't hers. We were supposed to start our forever. We planned it. We built it. We lived inside it. And somehow, in the space of a few hours between a quiet night and a frantic knock on my door forever reduced itself to a single envelope. A single handwritten sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew about her, about us, about the world we were building. Forever didn't break slowly. It didn't even crack. It ended cleanly, sharply, in the shape of a question I didn't know how to answer. What am I hiding? And the most haunting part wasn't the note itself, but the certainty that someone, somewhere, had made her believe it. Looking back, the week before the wedding feels like a storm. I refuse to believe in clouds gathering quietly, pressure rising slowly, warnings whispered just soft enough to ignore. At the time, I chalked it up to pre-wedding stress, nerves, the chaos of last-minute planning. But it wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Someone had begun pulling strings. And I didn't see the puppet show until it was too late. It started with Facebook. Lila showed me. Messages from accounts claiming to be old friends of mine, names I didn't recognize, faces I'd never seen. They messaged her long paragraphs about my past, warning her that I was dangerous, controlling, not the man she thought. The words were dramatic, overblown, the kind of gossip you expect from bitter acquaintances, except I didn't have acquaintances like that. I told her I had no idea who these people were. She nodded, but the seed had already been planted. Then a package arrived. No return address. Just my name scrawled in hurried black ink. Inside were photos printed, glossy, unsettling, pictures of me from years ago. Except I wasn't sure if all of them were me. Some looked eerily similar. Others were blurry, angled, questionable. But all of them were meant to tell a story I didn't recognize. In one, I was sitting at a bar I'd never been to. In another, I was passed out on a couch at a party I'd never attended. Lila held each photo like it was evidence proof of a hidden past. I kept repeating the same thing. These aren't mine. But repetition can't uproot doubt once it sinks in. Then came the voicemail. A blocked number. His a warped voice, like someone running their words through a cheap distortion app. He isn't who he claims to be. Check his past. Click. No explanation. No accusation. Just enough ambiguity to poison everything. Lila confronted me that night. Her hands were shaking not with anger, but with fear. Noah, is there anything you haven't told me? I told her everything. Every detail of my past. Every mistake. Every stupid decision I made when I was 19 and reckless. I opened drawers, old emails, old photos, anything to prove I wasn't hiding anything. She listened. She nodded. But I saw at the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Doubt had found a home inside her. It wasn't that she stopped trusting me overnight. It was that someone was feeding her fear in small, steady doses. Someone who knew exactly how to push, when to push, and how deeply to bury the lie so she would start digging for answers that didn't exist. By Wednesday, she was quieter. By Thursday, she was analyzing everything I said like she was looking for cracks in my sentences. By Friday, she wasn't smiling the same way. By Saturday, she barely touched me. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Someone wasn't trying to hurt me. They were trying to erase me. And the scariest part wasn't the sabotage itself. It was realizing the enemy knew me well enough to destroy my life with precision. The morning after the note, after the sleepless night, after the pacing, reading her handwriting until it blurred, I drove to her apartment with a sinking feeling in my gut. The roads felt too quiet, the air too heavy, like the world already knew something I didn't. I parked crookedly in front of her building, ran up the steps two at a time, and practically slammed into her front door. I knocked. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. Then I tried the handle. It opened. My stomach dropped. Her apartment looked raided. Not destroyed, emptied. Her closet, bare. Her drawers, cleared. The framed photos I bought her for Christmas gone. Even the silly little mug we bought on a road trip last summer missing. It wasn't the hurried escape of a panicked bride. It was the clean exit of someone who planned to disappear. And if she planned it, someone helped her plan it. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Not the ringing with no answer kind. The dead, disconnected silence. That meant the device was off or smashed. Her Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, gone. Entirely. Like she never existed. People don't delete their entire identity overnight. Not unless they're running from something. Or someone convinced them they needed to. I drove straight to her parents' house. Her mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Her father stood on the porch like he was guarding the door from me, not protecting her. She said she needed space, he muttered, jaw tight. She had questions, About your past. My past? The one with no criminal record, no arrests, no debts, no disasters? The past that barely had any drama at all? I laughed a broken, disbelieving sound. What past? I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Someone had given her a past to be afraid of. Someone she trusted more than she trusted me. When I tried to file a missing person report, the police listened politely for 30 seconds before shutting me down. She left voluntarily, the officer said. Adults are allowed to do that. I tried explaining the sabotage, the messages, the package, the voicemail, but each time I spoke, I felt them labeling me mentally. Paranoid fiancé, jilted groom, overreacting. The more I explained, the less they listened. Even her friends acted strangely. One told me she wasn't surprised Lila left. Another said Lila had doubts. But when I asked which doubts, about what, about who, each friend suddenly had somewhere else to be. Their rehearsed vagueness felt like code, as if they knew more but refused to say. It wasn't cold feet. It was coordination. Every answer I got felt scripted. Every question I asked ricocheted into silence. Everyone around her seemed to be following the same invisible playbook, one I'd never seen, never read, never even knew existed. But it was happening. It was deliberate. And I was the villain in a story someone else had written. By the time I left her parents' driveway, my chest felt hollow. Not because she vanished, because someone wanted me to think I drove her away. And deep down, beneath the fear and confusion, something darker settled in. This wasn't Lila leaving me. This was someone removing her from me. And whoever did it wasn't finished yet. 3 days after the wedding that never happened, I sat in our half-decorated living room surrounded by centerpieces, candles, and flower boxes that now felt like pieces of a collapsed universe. I kept telling myself to breathe, to think logically, but grief doesn't follow logic. It gnaws. It spirals. It loops. Eventually, I started sorting through the decorations just to keep my hands moving. That's when I lifted a box of table numbers and felt something taped underneath. A small white note. A note I hadn't put there. My pulse kicked hard against my ribs as I peeled it off. The handwriting wasn't Lila's. It wasn't mine. It wasn't her mother's either. It was jagged, rushed, almost angry. Only 4 words were written, but they hit harder than anything I'd read so far. She's lying to you. And below it, in smaller letters, check your messages. A cold bolt of dread shot up my spine. I unlocked my phone, fingers shaking. My message inbox looked normal at first. Then a wave of notifications poured in all at once, like a dam breaking. Dozens of unseen texts, all from an unknown number, all timestamped over the past week, all deliberately hidden until now. The first. The message was a picture. A man standing outside a bar at night. He looked like me, same build, same haircut, same posture, but his eyes were wrong. Hard. Mean. The next photo showed him yelling at someone. Another showed him shoving a stranger. Another showed him trashed and stumbling, covered in blood from a fight. It wasn't me, but it looked enough like me to fool someone who was already scared. Then the texts turned ugly. Accusations written as if I sent them. Threats. Cruel statements. Screenshots of conversations with Leela, screenshots I never had. Screenshots where I called her names, admitted to cheating, bragged about a criminal past I didn't have, even hinted at hurting people who crossed me. The messages were designed to feel real, sloppy grammar, midnight timestamps, emotional typos, all crafted to mimic me, all crafted to break her trust. Then came the final text. He isn't who you think. I can prove it. Leave before it's too late. My stomach dropped. The puzzle pieces clicked sharp, cruel, undeniable. Someone wasn't just sabotaging my relationship. They were creating a whole new version of me. A nightmare version. A version who cheated. A version who lied. A version who threatened people. A version who scared Lila enough to make her run. They didn't want her to doubt me. They wanted her terrified of me. The photos. The fake messages. The distorted voicemail. The planted, old friends. The package. The note left with her father. This wasn't random chaos. This was a campaign. I sank onto the floor, heart pounding in my ears. My real life had been replaced with a fictitious one, engineered, manipulated, weaponized. Someone had impersonated me so convincingly that the woman I loved believed she was escaping danger. And the worst part wasn't the sabotage itself. It was the rising, sick certainty that whoever did this didn't just know Lila. They knew me. The moment the truth clicked into place, the fake screenshots, the staged photos, the anonymous warnings I felt, something inside me twist violently. Not just hurt, not just fear, recognition. Whoever did this knew me too well, knew my routines, knew my past, knew exactly which lies would sound believable. So I went to the one place where the truth should have been safe. My family. I walked into my parents' house still shaking, the note and printed screenshots in my hand. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I laid every lie out on the dining table like evidence in a courtroom. My mother stared at the photos with wide eyes. My father swore under his breath. My little sister kept repeating, "Who would do this?" But one person wouldn't look at me. Carter, my younger brother, 28, perpetually unemployed, eternally resentful, always watching my life like it was something stolen from him. He sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched so tightly the muscle twitched. His eyes didn't meet mine once. Not when I explained how Lila vanished. Not when I said someone was impersonating me. Not when I held up the doctored screenshots. His silence wasn't innocence. It was pressure. Pressure building to a breaking point. "Carter?" I asked quietly. He flinched. And that was all it took. He cracked. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was a slow unraveling, like a thread being pulled until the whole thing collapsed. "I did it," he whispered. Just 2 words. 2 words that detonated my entire world. My mom gasped. My father stood so fast. His chair scraped across the floor. But Carter didn't stop there. Once he began, everything poured out in a sickening stream, the messages, the anonymous accounts, the hired digital artist he paid to create fake screenshots. He admitted he'd spent months messaging Leela as concerned friends, planting doubts one by one, until she was drowning in them. He admitted he hired someone online to Photoshop me into fights, bars, shady places I'd never been. He admitted he used a voice distortion app to create the threatening voicemail. He admitted he submitted anonymous tips to Leela's parents. He admitted everything. And not once did he apologize. When I finally found my voice, all I could ask was, why? Why sabotage the best part of my life? Why ruin the woman I loved? Why impersonate me? His answer wasn't shouted. It wasn't emotional. It was flat, cold, terrifying. In its simplicity, "You were leaving me behind." He looked at me with eyes full of something twisted, envy sharp enough to cut bone. "You don't deserve happiness more than me." He wasn't drunk. He wasn't confused. He wasn't joking. He meant every word. My brother, the person who shared my childhood, my memories. My blood had systematically dismantled my future because he couldn't stand the idea of me having one. He didn't sabotage my wedding out of anger, or fear, or misunderstanding. He did it out of jealousy so deep, it turned into cruelty. He destroyed my relationship because my joy reminded him of his own emptiness. And looking at him, I realized something chilling. He wasn't done. After hearing Carter admit everything, every message, every lie, every fabricated nightmare, something inside me snapped clean. Not in anger, not in rage, in resolve. I needed answers from the one person who deserved the truth more than anyone. I needed to find Leela. Her parents wouldn't tell me where she went, but her little sister slipped up, mentioning Lila had texted a friend near San Antonio. That was enough. I spent hours calling mutual acquaintances, scrolling through old posts, and piecing together fragments until I finally figured it out. She was staying with a college friend, a woman named Harper, 3 hours south. I drove with my heart in my throat, rehearsing explanations, apologies, truths, anything that might break through the wall Carter had built between us. When I finally pulled into the quiet cul-de-sac outside Harper's house, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. I knocked once, twice. Then the door cracked open. Lila stood there. Her face was swollen from days of crying eyes. Red, lips trembling, makeup smudged like inked bruises. She looked exhausted, fragile, like someone who had been running from ghosts she thought were real. And when she saw me, she froze. "Noah," she breathed, the name breaking in the middle. "Please," I said softly, "just hear me out." She hesitated, gripping the doorframe like it was holding her up. Then she stepped aside. I walked in, and the moment the door clicked shut behind me, she collapsed onto the couch, hugging her knees. Then she showed me everything. Her phone was a museum of sabotage, hundreds of screenshots, messages, photos, fake conversations where I admitted to cheating, threads where I threatened people, photos of me with bruised knuckles outside bars, A supposed ex-girlfriend claiming I'd assaulted her, written in a tone designed to sound terrified. A complete, malicious fabrication. They came from so many numbers, she whispered. Different area codes, different writing styles, different stories, different identities, all controlled by one person. Carter pretended to be multiple people? My voice cracked on his name. She nodded. He even messaged me as a woman, saying you heard her. Her voice shook. I didn't want to believe it, Noah. I swear I didn't. But everything looked so real. Every message backed up another. Every photo matched the timeline. Even your friends warned me. I closed my eyes. Those weren't friends. They were Carter's masks. She handed me her phone with trembling fingers. He told me you'd get violent if you found out I knew. He said you'd try to cover your tracks. He said you were pretending to be someone you weren't. Her breath hitched, and I believed him, not because she doubted me, but because Carter constructed a world where doubt became survival. Seeing the fear he'd planted in her eyes felt like being stabbed with a blade forged out of betrayal. Someone she loved told her I was dangerous. Someone she trusted presented evidence. Someone she thought of as family convinced her to run. And now she was sitting in front of me, heartbroken, ashamed, destroyed not by me, but by the person who should have defended us both. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, she whispered, tears spilling again. I left because the version of you he showed me terrified me. And as her voice cracked open, I realized the cruelest truth of all. Carter didn't just steal my relationship. He stole her sense of safety. He stole her ability to trust the man she loved. Driving back to Austin with Leela beside me felt surreal, like guiding a ghost back toward the life she should have never been forced to abandon. She sat quietly, hands trembling in her lap, staring out the window as if the world had tilted too far for her to rebalance. Her friend Harper followed behind us in her car, refusing to let Leela face any more shocks alone. And honestly, I needed that backup more than I wanted to admit. We walked into my house, the house that should have been our first home together, and I could feel the weight of everything Carter had shattered lingering like a stain in the walls. Leela stood near the entry table, where her father had handed me her goodbye note. She exhaled, shakily, as if returning to the crime scene of her own heartbreak. I owed her the truth in full. The whole, ugly truth. So I laid it all out. First, Carter's recorded confession, his voice admitting each lie with chilling clarity. Then the IP logs and timestamps I'd pulled from my Wi-Fi admin panel showing dozens of messages coming from Carter's room at specific hours. Then the burner email addresses he'd created, one tied to an old recovery phone number of his. Then the digital receipts from a shady online service he used to buy custom evidence, photos, manipulated texts, fake screenshots designed to destroy someone's life. I showed her everything, not to overwhelm her, but to give her back the truth someone stole. Lila sat frozen, staring at the mountain of proof with tears streaming silently down her face. Harper clenched her jaw, anger radiating off her like heat. When the last piece of evidence hit the table, Leela finally whispered, "He built a monster and told me it was you." Her voice broke, and so did something inside me. Then came the part I dreaded, telling my parents. We drove to their house together, Leela and her friend refusing to let me go alone. My parents were already there, confused and tense, clearly expecting drama. When I told them what Carter had done, their reaction wasn't shock. It was deflection. Mom gasped, but instead of outrage, she clutched her chest. "Oh, sweetheart, Carter's been struggling. You know how insecure he is." Dad rubbed his forehead. "He's troubled. He needs help. Don't make this worse." Make this worse? My entire life had been detonated like a bomb, and they were worried about Carter's feelings. I showed them the proof anyway. The receipts, the screenshots, the confession. My mother cried, not for me, not for Lila, but for Carter. "I just wish you would have been more supportive," she sobbed. My father shook his head. "This family doesn't turn on each other." But Carter hadn't just turned on me. He'd gutted my future, shredded my reputation, and nearly destroyed the woman I was going to marry. And my parents wanted compassion? Compassion for the arsonist holding the match? "No," I said quietly. "Compassion doesn't rebuild a ruined life. Their expressions hardened. And compassion doesn't erase the lies." For the first time in my life, I realized something unshakable. Sometimes blood isn't family. Sometimes truth is. The next morning felt strangely quiet, as if the world itself paused to watch what happened next. Leela sat at my kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug she never drank from, eyes swollen and distant. She wasn't my bride to be anymore. She was a victim of a war she never asked to fight, a war my own brother started. But even in the silence, we understood one thing clearly. This couldn't be brushed under a rug. Not anymore. We went to the police station together. She filed a harassment report, voice shaking, knees trembling, fingers clutching her phone like it was both lifeline and evidence. She listed every message, every threat, every fake conversation. She handed over the screenshots, the photos, the lies designed to crush her spirit. And when she said Carter's name aloud, something inside her broke. Not fear, but the final shred of innocence. Then it was my turn. I pressed charges for identity impersonation, digital fraud, and defamation. The officer's eyebrows rose at the sheer volume of evidence: Carter's confession, the burner accounts, the IP logs, the manipulated images. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This wasn't a prank. This was premeditated character assassination. When the warrant was issued, it felt unreal, like seeing justice printed on paper. But reality shattered into focus when the police arrived at my parents' house that evening. Carter was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming that I'd ruined his life, that I'd taken everything from him. He never once mentioned the life he destroyed. He never once showed remorse. My family split like a fault line. Half of them were horrified, unable to believe the cruelty, the planning, the obsession. They asked how he learned to forge screenshots, who helped him, how long he'd been spiraling. They hugged me tight. They hugged Leela tighter. They apologized for everything they never saw. The other half? They blamed me. Said I shouldn't have pressed charges. Said Carter just needed help. Said I was tearing the family apart. My mother wept like I had murdered someone, not the other way around. My father insisted we handle this privately, as if years of venom could be wiped away with another family dinner. It was betrayal layered on top of betrayal. Meanwhile, Leela and I, once inseparable, now sat across from each other with a distance no apology could erase. We tried to talk. We tried to laugh. We tried to find a version of us untouched by Carter's poison. But pain changes people. Trust phrase. Love bruises. And sometimes wounds don't heal the same way they were opened. We agreed to take space. There was no anger, no accusations, no screaming. Just two people who had been cracked open in all the wrong places, trying to protect whatever pieces remained. We weren't enemies, but we weren't us anymore. The wedding was officially canceled. The venue refunded half. The florist refused to refund anything. The dress went into storage. The house echoed in ways it never had before. Nothing exploded. Nothing collapsed dramatically. It was a quiet ending. The kind that hurts more than destruction. Because destruction is loud. But loss whispers. And in that whisper, I understood. Carter didn't just ruin a wedding. He fractured the future. And the pieces were too sharp to pick up. A year is a strange thing. Long enough for wounds to scar, but not long enough for them to disappear. I still live in the Austin house, the one Leela and I painted together, argued in, dreamed in. For months, I couldn't walk through it without feeling like I was trespassing in a life that never fully existed. But slowly, painfully, steadily, I reclaimed it. I took down the wedding photos, the ones we posed for during our engagement shoot, the ones where she laughed into my shoulder while I pretended to hate the camera. I replaced them with landscapes, mountains, forests, oceans, scenes that didn't remind me of what I lost, but of spaces where things grow back. And the new picture felt like taking back a piece of the home that used to feel suffocating. Lila and I talk sometimes. Not often. Just enough to remind each other we survived something neither of us deserved. Her messages come with gentleness. Now updates on her job, her dog, the small victories. She's collecting as she rebuilds. We're not rebuilding us. We're rebuilding ourselves. Healing from opposite sides of a wound we didn't inflict. There are moments when we laugh like old friends. Moments when the silence between us feels like respect instead of pain. Moments when I wonder what our life might have been without the lies. But love isn't always meant to continue. Sometimes the kindest thing love can do is step back. Carter never apologized. Not once. Not in the courtroom, not in letters, not after sentencing, not when the family begged him to say something. He looked at me every time like I stole something from him, when in reality, he stole the one person I thought would be my wife. My parents barely speak to me now. They grieved Carter's reputation harder than they grieved the destruction he caused. Mom still says I overreacted. Dad still says family should handle things privately. They say it like I detonated the bomb instead of dragging everyone away from the blast. But distance has a way of clarifying who is hurt and who is harmful. And in that distance, I learned something powerful, something freeing, something I wish I had learned sooner. Sometimes life doesn't fall apart because you made the wrong choice. Sometimes it falls apart because someone else couldn't stand to see you build something right. Jealousy doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers lies into the ears of the people you love the most. Losing Lila broke me, but it also stripped me down to the part of myself I had ignored for years. The part that needed boundaries. The part that needed strength. The part that needed truth. The part that finally understood that love isn't always meant to last. Sometimes it's meant to protect. So I stayed in the Austin house. Not because it's where she left, but because it's where I learned to stay standing after everything collapsed. Some love stories end to save you, and losing Lila was how I finally found myself.